Delta and United are the two best rated airlines in all of America, but which is actually better? Well, in order to find out, I'm going to be taking 2 flights and testing everything that I could possibly think of, and the winner is going to surprise you.
So up first today, I'm going to be flying on United, and I've only ever flown them one time before, which was a pretty decent experience, but guess what? Things can always change. And so far today, there is one big problem that I do need to tell you guys about, but I'm going to be doing that as soon as I get through security. But now that I am at the airport, I think it's time to head inside to check in and grab the boarding pass.
Now that I was in the airport, I made my way over to the kiosk machines where all I needed to do was put in my booking reference, and then I was able to get my boarding pass for today's flight.
Getting the boarding pass took literally 2 seconds. I think that was one of the fastest check-in processes I have ever done, which is always nice. For some airlines, when you use the kiosk machine, it can be a total pain. It can be a complete hassle, but that was literally only 2 screens. We got the boarding pass, and thankfully we are also in a window seat. So now it's time to head through security so I can tell you guys about that problem that I mentioned earlier.
And this problem is going to be a pretty big issue, but luckily I was able to get through security super fast.
So obviously, since I'm from Toronto, I fly out of this airport a ton, and this is the fastest airport security here I have ever experienced. Normally, every time I fly out of this airport, especially when I'm flying to the US, it is super busy. I get double searched. I've even been triple searched here before. But thankfully, this time around, none of that happened, and I was through security in literally 5 minutes, and even customs too. But now that I am through security, I think it's time to tell you guys about that issue. So when I went ahead and bought my United ticket, it actually said that I was on one of their medium-sized planes, and for a 1-hour flight, that is extremely rare because sometimes it's on this crappy puddle jumper plane, which is never fun. But overall, that's only going to add to the excitement of this review. But now that I have about 45 minutes until the flight is actually supposed to board, I think it's time to go and check out the lounge, and then it's finally going to be time for the first flight of the day on United.
Making my way into the lounge, it was definitely one of the worst ones I've ever been to. First of all, it was super small, and for breakfast, the only options was eggs, beans, potatoes, sausages, or various salads. But at least there was a bar to drink away the misery before grabbing a plate of food.
Alright, so now I've been to that lounge before, and I'll be honest, things really have not changed. The food selection is still extremely limited, even though the food is pretty decent. The staff are pretty nice, but my biggest issue that I have with that lounge in particular is there is basically no natural lighting. The windows really suck, you can't even look outside of it, and it is extremely tiny for a lounge. So overall, I'm gonna have to give that lounge a solid 7 out of 10 because that is ridiculous. But anyways, there's now only about 15 minutes left until my flight is supposed to board, so I thought I'd take this time to tell you guys a little bit more about United, just in case you have never flown them before.
Right away, as you can see, United is rated a 3-star airline, and the customer reviews are all over the place. People like Nicholas say that United sucks. John says to not fly with United. Brad says the hidden fees are wrong and a killer, but people like Todd even went as far to say they were less than stellar. Yet on the other hand, people like Carrie said they had a pleasant and comfortable flight. Shirley raved about amazing customer service. Beth said they have a top-notch crew. Nick said they are the best airline ever.
So obviously the reviews are pretty good, but there's also some pretty bad ones too, which is pretty normal when it comes to one of these major airlines. But now that we know what the reviews say, it's time to see what the flight is actually like for ourselves. So let's head there right now. And remember, after this, I still need to fly on Delta to see which of the 2 airlines are actually better.
But in the meantime, after getting to my gate, we had a tiny issue.
So it turns out that my gate has been switched. Originally, I was supposed to be flying out of gate F60, and now we're going out of F66. Not a big deal because we're still on time, but hopefully nothing else changes from here.
And I wish that stayed the case, but after getting to the gate, the boarding process took ages, but eventually it was time to go.
Hi there, how are you?
You have a wonderful day. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, you too. So boarding is taking absolute ages. It is already 10:40 and the flight was supposed to depart at 10:45, meaning we're gonna be pretty delayed. But regardless, it's time to see what United is gonna be like. Hi there.
Making my way through the cabin, first I needed to pass by the business class before getting to my seat for today's flight. Right off the bat, the butt cushion, backrest, and headrest were pretty solid, and the legroom was actually super respectable. Checking out the seat pouch, there was a decent amount of room for storing things. Above that was the tray table, which turned out to be a pretty solid size, and in the cubby I found the safety pamphlet and magazine for today's flight. But then something unexpected happened.
So it turns out the flight has been delayed because the captain isn't even here. I have flown a ton and I have never experienced this before, where the entire crew is here, the second in command is here, but the captain and the main pilot himself, he's just nowhere to be found. To make matters worse, they don't even know where the pilot is. They don't know when he's going to get here. They predicted 10 to 15 minutes. Now obviously the first thing that comes to mind is, did the pilot party too much last night, which is obviously a concerning thought. So it's going to be interesting to see what it's like when he finally gets here, and also what time we actually end up leaving. So far we're not off to the greatest of starts.
And no, we didn't only wait another 5 minutes or 10 minutes or even 15 minutes, because it turned out to be way longer than that.
Update, 30 minutes later, still no pilot. Hopefully this doesn't take an hour. This is the most random delay I have ever experienced in my life.
But at long last, the pilot finally made it and we were able to leave. For this first flight of the day, I was going to be flying roughly an hour from Toronto to New York, and after getting to the runway, it was time for takeoff. Now that I was in the air, the in-flight service would soon be starting, so it's time to check out the entertainment. Since this flight had no TVs, I had to connect to the fake Wi-Fi because the real Wi-Fi costed $8 before being able to see what they had, and I won't lie, the movie selection was pretty horrific. To make matters worse, on this flight, it turned out they weren't even giving out any food, including snacks. But at least the bathroom was pretty decent.
Alright, so now that I'm a little bit over halfway through the flight, I thought it'd be time to show you guys my mid-flight thoughts. So right off the bat, the delay on the ground was absolutely ridiculous. It ended up being about 55 minutes because the pilot had gone to the wrong terminal, which I have never heard of before. And by the time we were finally in the air, it was more than an hour past our original departure time. Now the one plus side of this is the pilots have said that they are taking shortcuts in order to get us to Newark faster, which is always nice to see that they're making up time. But now, how about everything else with this flight? When it comes to the seat, the legroom and the recline are amazing, but the overall comfort is pretty average. At first, it's super good, but after a while, my back started to get a little bit sore, and right now, it's kind of hurting. Another thing that's kind of unfortunate is there wasn't really an in-flight service. There were no snacks. All we got was water, which is a pretty big letdown, especially considering I am 99% sure that Delta is going to be giving out snacks.
So now that I'm done with the first flight on United, it's time for the second flight on Delta in order to find out which is truly the best in all of America.
So overall, the first flight on United was pretty solid, but now it's time for the second flight on Delta. Now I know a lot of people are going to be saying that, oh, JetBlue or American Airlines are the best in the entire country. Well, guess what? No, it's actually Delta. But now that I'm here at the airport, I think it's time to head inside to check in and grab our boarding pass.
Now that I was inside the airport, instead of using the check-in agents, I decided to use the kiosk instead. So after scanning my passport and agreeing that I wasn't going to take over the plane and fly it into something, I was able to get my boarding pass.
Overall, that check-in process was super easy. Normally, I won't go to the actual agents because then they'll actually weigh my carry-on and it's always overweight, so that's a little life hack to get around that. And to make things even better, I'm also in a window seat. But now that I have my boarding pass, it's time to head through security, and apparently there's a really cool lounge on the other side.
But it wasn't just one lounge, because there were actually multiple, but soon enough I was through security without any issues.
Now lucky for me, security took literally 2 seconds. My bags didn't get searched, but now the only problem is I have about 4 hours to kill on this layover. But the one benefit is that there are a ton of airport lounges at JFK, so we may as well go explore a bunch of them.
Starting things off with the Virgin Atlantic Clubhouse, it was pretty funky on the interior with plenty of cool different areas to check out, like this cruise ship and a bar. But I got myself a cookie before heading over to the Centurion Lounge. Inside there was plenty of space to sit, and the food, well, that was unreal. There were buns, potatoes, chicken, pasta, and a bunch more, so I grabbed a tiny plate because up next was the best lounge yet, the Delta Sky Club. Not only is this lounge brand new with a 360-degree bar, but it also has plenty of space for seating and an area to relax outside. But the food was god tier. There were multiple hot dishes, tons of different lunch meats, cheeses or breads, along with salads, sandwiches, and even a ton of different desserts. But best of all was the slushy machine, so obviously I had to get myself a meal.
Up first we had the Virgin Atlantic Clubhouse, which was pretty good. There was a ton of nice stuff in there, but when it came to the food, you had to pay for everything, which kind of sucked. So for that, I'm gonna have to give it a solid 7 out of 10. The second lounge that I went to was the American Express Centurion Lounge, and the food was really good. There was tons of nice seating areas, but overall, I'm only gonna have to give that one an 8.5 out of 10. And then finally, we have the Delta Sky Club, which was unreal. It was super modern. There was tons of seating areas, tons of food selection, and the food was also delicious. And overall, I'm gonna have to give that a solid 10 out of 10. But anyways, there's now only about 15 minutes left until my flight is supposed to board. And just in case you're not a freedom-loving American and you have no idea what Delta is, I'm gonna read you guys some of the reviews.
Compared to United at 3 stars, Delta is rated at 4 with numerous awards, and based on the customer reviews, people love them. Now, on the negative side, people like Anna complained about overpriced tickets and bad customer service. Sam said it was one of the worst flying experiences of their life, and Ashley said that they were so bad that words cannot describe. Meanwhile, on the more positive side, Tripp said they have amazing customer service. Jack called them the best airline with brain rot memes, and Patty said it is a breeze to fly with them.
So now obviously, because they are the best rated airline in all of the US, the reviews were gonna be pretty good. But just like any other airline, every flight is completely different from one another. So it's gonna be super interesting to see what they're actually like. So it's time for us to head to the gate for today's flight.
But unfortunately for me, even though the plane was technically here, it ended up being delayed, just like the United flight from earlier. Turns out the flight has been delayed by about 10 minutes. Not a great start, but the flight is what actually matters.
I'll be honest, those face scanner things are pretty terrifying. So many airlines use them and I'm just uncomfortable with them. But it's time for the flight.
Making my way through the cabin, first I passed by the business class before making it back to my seat in economy.
Initial thoughts on the seat? Actually really good. The butt cushion, the backrest, and the headrest are all super comfortable. The legroom isn't bad at all. I'm only 5'8", and it's pretty decent for me. I think if you're a little bit taller, you might want to get the extended legroom area because it can get a little bit tight. But at least the one thing to make up for it is there's a very good amount of recline. Now, some of the other really good things about Delta compared to other airlines is there is free Wi-Fi. I know that sounds like it's super basic, but on so many airlines, they will charge you to even text or use data. But on Delta, it is completely free. You can watch YouTube and do pretty much whatever you want. But guess what? Things get even better because not only do they have Wi-Fi, but they also have an in-flight entertainment system. So I'm gonna need to check all of that out as soon as we're in the air. But for now, let's explore the seat some more.
Checking out the seat pouch, there was a ton of room for storing things, and inside there was a safety pamphlet, which we won't be needing since this is a Boeing, and also a waste bag. Under the TV was a USB port and a full-size power outlet for charging devices. The overhead reading lamp and AC was working, and there was a good-sized tray table, but that's when I noticed an issue.
This is like the third or fourth time where I booked a window seat and it turned out just to be this stupid pillar. Now, I do have this tiny little sliver of window, but I wouldn't exactly count that. It's a little bit ridiculous because I looked on seat maps. I also looked at Delta's flight map when I was booking this seat and it said, yeah, you have a window. That is complete bullshit because we don't have a window. Now, it's definitely not the end of the world, but it's still a little bit unfortunate.
But regardless of how I feel, I was stuck here, and soon enough we began pushing back from the gate. For this second flight of the day, I was going to be flying from New York down to Orlando, and after getting to the runway, it was time for takeoff.
After a 40-minute delay, we are finally in the air. Now, when it comes to Delta, normally flights aren't this delayed. I have no idea what was going on. The original delay was because of the inbound flight, but for some reason, boarding just took forever, and then there was taxiing, but we're finally in the air. And now that we are, that means the in-flight entertainment was working, and also the Wi-Fi, so let's check that out.
Right off the bat, I got a pair of complimentary earbuds, but checking out the TV, it was pretty modern, but at the end of the day, it was similar to a lot of economy ones. Looking at the movies, there were plenty of options to choose from, and the same could be said for the shows, but along with that, there was live TV, Spotify, games, and the in-flight map. But since this was a shorter flight, soon enough they came around handing out chips and drinks.
Just like on the United flight earlier, this was definitely a shorter flight, which means the meal service is more like snacks and a drink, which is totally normal. This time there was actually a few options. There was sun chips, there was cookies, there was biscuits, and pretty much any soft drink, which is a pretty solid win. And at this point in the flight, the seat's actually holding up really well too. On some airlines, when you're 2 hours in, your butt could be hurting, your back could be sore, but this one's actually really comfortable. But the one thing that I have noticed is that the legroom is a little bit tighter than I thought it was initially. When you do put the seat back, it kind of puts your knees forward, and I'm only 5'8", and I'm kind of bumping, which could be an issue if you're taller than me. But other than that, the service, the entertainment, the Wi-Fi has been awesome.
Now, which of the two airlines do I think is actually the best in America? Well, despite there being a lot of similarities, I'm gonna need to give the edge to Delta, since overall I think it was slightly better in most areas. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and watch this one next.